Today we are starting with our next unit, our focus of study, which will take us 2 weeks to complete. Okay. All right. Socialization is the lifelong process through which people learn the values and norms of a given society. We talked about socialization a couple of weeks ago, so I am not going to go into too much detail. The three primary agents of socialization are family, which is responsible for teaching children, ways to behave, manners, how to be polite, how to share within, and how to behave. Okay. Then school and peers is the second agent of socialization. And schools will teach children things like responsibility, taking turns, work ethic, and so on. Children in the playground will teach each other how to share. They'll come up with rules on how to play and different games. And then the media um, teaches us, trends and how to behave in groups and what's trendy, what music to listen to. It influences us how we behave in society. Okay? Sociological perspectives. In sociology, we have three perspectives or theories or ways of explaining society. The first one is structural functionalism. It's considered to be a macro theory because it looks at the overall picture and is considered to be a positive perspective. It is the relationship between parts of society. How aspects of society are functional. Society is held together by social consensus or cohesion. Members of society agree upon and work together for the best of society. So basically, this theory looks at society as a machine, with each component being a part of the machine that works together to make that machine work and move. Okay? In this perspective, we have manifest functions and latent functions. So, for example, in a school, um, the manifest functions, the intentional and obvious functions are to teach curriculum, how to add, how to read, how to, um, biology terminology. Whereas the latent functions are the unintentional and not obvious. So things like teaching punctuality, taking a turn, not interrupting others, work ethic, time management. Okay. So those would be the manifest and latent functions. Then symbolic interactionist is a micro perspective. It focuses on certain components rather than the whole picture. It is also considered to be positive. Okay. Here they focus on the use of symbols, the face-to-face interactions, how people attach meaning to symbols and act accordingly to their interpretation of those symbols. It focuses on how people act on a day-to-day basis. So if we look at the institution of marriage, they will look at the symbols of wedding band. It symbolizes ever never-ending love, vows symbolizing that commitment and what it means to be committed in to one another. The white bridal dresses, right, to symbolize the purity of the female entering the institution of marriage. And then conflict theory, it's a macro theory. It is negative. It's considered to be negative because it focuses on the negative components of society. It focuses on the competition for scarce resources and how the elite will control the poor and the weak. Gender socialization is the process through which children learn about expectations, attitudes, and behaviors typically associated with boys and girls. So, how to behave, what to wear, how to talk, and so on, that is associated with being either male or female, or being a boy or girl. Sex refers to the biological differences between males and females, whereas gender is a social construct which refers to the roles and males and females in a society. The first perspective would be structural symbolism. Okay? This perspective sees human behaviors as part of systems that help keep society organized and functioning. With gender is a means of organizing society into distinct roles that complement each other. Men, boys, and girls are socialized to take traits that complement one another to make it easier to maintain family units. Now, some anthropologists argue that hunter and gatherer societies originated the idea that men provide and women take care of the home, right? Men were physically stronger and were not burdened with bearing children, and so they were able to leave the home and do the hunting and provide for the family. Okay. One limitation of this theory, though, is that it did overemphasize the more aggressive autonomous roles like the hunting and warfare, and did not really focus on things like the gathering or things like fishing, which were typically done by women, but and also provided for the family. Okay, now these roles became institutionalized. Even when physical strength was no longer needed in many jobs, it was taken for granted that men would be the breadwinners and women would take care of the home. So, boys and girls then are socialized differently. Boys typically are taught instrumental qualities, which include confidence, competitiveness, and it prepares them for the workforce. Whereas girls are taught expressive qualities, which are empathy and sensitivity. So women typically are stereotyped as being emotional or over emotional, which make people falsely believe that men are a better fit for leadership positions. Symbolic interactionist, okay, focused on how gender is part of a day-to-day life. From this perspective, gender is something someone does rather than something that is innate or imposed by certain institutions. Okay, so for example, clothes, hairstyle, and makeup all telegraph gender to the people around you. Okay? Gender roles, how society defines how women and men should think and behave, like clothing and body language. Okay, so if we look at these two pictures here, we see that the only difference between these two individuals is the clothing. One is wearing a dress, the other one is wearing a suit, even though they have the same hairstyle. They are um, one we know is female and the other one we know is male. Now, if we were to now add long hair, we could possibly say, well, this is a female in a suit. However, if we were to put makeup and if we have a male with makeup and long hair and we put them in a dress, it would not be as accepted. It would be more of a rejection of those gender roles than the other way around. Okay, so if we're looking at symbols, right, the ways that women are socialized in conversation are different. So, for example, for women, they're encouraged to, or they're taught to do a lot more eye contact to demonstrate that you are listening, or to smile to encourage the other person to speak. Okay. Masculine traits are associated with power, taking up more space. So, all those power poses, taking control of a conversation, and are often are valued more than feminine traits. Okay? Everyday social interaction reinforces these gender roles. Okay? The limitation of this theory, however, is because it focuses on the micro, the small components like situational experiences, rather than the macro, the broader patterns, it misses the problem of gender inequality.